The morning sun had barely crested the mountains when I heard the unmistakable click of designer heels on gravel. I didn't need to look up from my beehives to know who was trespassing on my property again. Excuse me, Mr. Harrison." Patricia Moreland's voice cut through the peaceful morning like a chainsaw through butter. I straightened up slowly, my 62-year-old back protesting the sudden movement, and turned to face the HOA president. She stood at the edge of my apiary, one perfectly manicured hand on her hip, the other clutching her ever-present clipboard like a weapon. "Mrs. Moreland," I said, keeping my voice level, "you're on private property." "I am conducting official HOA business," she declared, her pink pantsuit practically glowing in the early light. "These creatures are a nuisance to the entire community." I gestured to my 30 beehives, arranged in neat rows across my 2-acre property at the edge of Pine Valley Estates. "These creatures pollinate every garden in the neighborhood, including yours." Her face flushed. "That's beside the point. According to Section 47B of the HOA bylaws, which don't apply to me," I interrupted, "my property was here before your HOA existed. I'm grandfathered in, remember? We've had this conversation 6 times. Patricia's jaw tightened. "Well, we'll see about that at next month's meeting. In the meantime, I'm documenting the situation." She made a big show of writing something on her clipboard. I watched her storm off, her heels kicking up small clouds of dust. 20 years I'd been keeping bees on this land, and in the 3 years since Pine Valley Estates had sprouted up around me, Patricia had made it her personal mission to make my life miserable. A week later, I was in town when I got a call from my neighbor, old Tom Richardson. "Jack, you better get home," he said, his voice tight. "That HOA woman is on your property with some people. They're loading something into a truck." My heart dropped. I made it home in record time, but I was too late. Patricia's white SUV was just pulling away, and behind it was a pickup truck carrying 6 of my beehives. I ran to my apiary. 6 hives gone. Just vanished. These weren't just boxes of wood. They were colonies I'd nurtured for years, producing the best honey in the county. Tom appeared at the fence line. "I tried to stop them, Jack, but she had some papers, said it was legal." "It wasn't legal," I said quietly, my hands shaking with rage. "It was theft." I called the sheriff, but Patricia had covered her bases. She got an emergency order from a judge she played bridge with, claiming my bees had attacked a child. It was complete fiction, but by the time the truth came out, my hives were gone, relocated to who knows where. I spent 3 days calling lawyers, filing complaints, and getting nowhere. The system was rigged, and Patricia knew exactly how to work it. On the 4th day, I was inspecting my remaining hives when I noticed something odd. Bear tracks. Fresh ones, leading from the forest behind my property toward the hives, then veering away. Black bears loved honey, and we had plenty of them in these mountains. They usually avoided my apiary because I kept it well-maintained and used electric fencing, but something had drawn one close. Then it hit me. Patricia hadn't just stolen my hives. I knew exactly where she'd put them. Last month, she'd been bragging at the community meeting about the artisanal honey boutique she was opening in her oversized backyard. She probably placed my stolen hives right there, thinking she could profit from my decades of work. I drove past her house that evening. Sure enough, there they were, my 6 hives, distinctive blue paint and all, sitting in the far corner of her perfectly landscaped yard. No electric fence, no bear deterrence, just sitting there like an all-you-can-eat buffet. A plan began forming in my mind. That night, I went to my barn and found what I was looking for, 3 5-gallon buckets of old honey frames I'd been saving for rendering. The honey had crystallized, but it was still fragrant, still sweet, still irresistible to any bear within a mile. I loaded them into my truck and waited until 2 a.m. Then I drove the back roads to the forest access point behind Patricia's property. The bear tracks I'd seen at my place had come from this direction. I hauled those buckets deep into the woods, then started making a trail. Every 100 feet, I'd crack open a frame and rub honey on tree trunks, bushes, and rocks. A breadcrumb trail of pure temptation, leading from the forest right to the tree line behind Patricia's property. Then at the edge of her yard, I emptied all 3 buckets, creating a sticky, sweet-smelling mess just behind the bushes that border her fence. I stood back and surveyed my work. The honey gleamed in the moonlight. If there were bears in these woods, and I knew there were, they'd find this trail by dawn. Then I went home and waited. The call came at 6:47 a.m. Tom again, but this time he was laughing so hard he could barely speak. "Jack, oh Lord. Jack, you gotta see this. Patricia, the bears." I grabbed my binoculars and headed to my porch, which had a perfect view of Patricia's backyard. What I saw was better than anything I could have imagined, for black bears, a mother and 3 yearlings, had discovered my stolen hives. The mother, easily 300 pounds, had already demolished 2 of them completely, honey and comb scattered everywhere. The yearlings were having the time of their lives, rolling in the wreckage, their fur matted with honey. Then Patricia emerged from her house in a silk robe, coffee mug in hand. Her scream could probably be heard in the next county. "Get away! Shoo! Those are my hives." The mother bear looked up, honey dripping from her snout, utterly unimpressed. Patricia tried clapping her hands. The bears ignored her. She grabbed a broom and took 3 steps toward them before survival instinct finally kicked in and she ran back inside. For the next 6 hours, those bears had a party. They demolished all 6 hives, ate their fill of honey, and turned Patricia's pristine backyard into a disaster zone. Patricia called animal control, who told her they couldn't do anything until bears left on their own. She called the sheriff, who reminded her that feeding wildlife, which she was technically doing by having unsecured beehives, was against county ordinance. By noon, the bears had wandered off, satisfied. Patricia's yard looked like a hurricane had hit it. Wooden hive boxes were in splinters, frames scattered everywhere, her prize-winning roses trampled flat, her decorative fountain knocked over. The emergency HOA meeting was called for that evening. I showed up with my lawyer and a folder full of documentation proving the hives were mine, that they'd been stolen, and that Patricia had no legal right to them. Patricia stood at the front of the room, her perfect hair slightly disheveled, her eyes wild. This man deliberately led bears to my property. He sabotaged my business. You stole my beehives, I said calmly. What happened after that was nature taking its course. Maybe next time you'll remember that black bears love honey, and you'll think twice before putting unsecured hives in your backyard. The other HOA members were silent. Several were fighting back smiles. My lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Harrison is willing to forget the theft charges and the property damage from the forced removal of his hives if Mrs. Moreland agrees to cease all harassment